Thank you. So I'm at my cousin's house, and we haven't seen each other for ages, and he remembers me only as a young, fit Marine. Why are you laughing already? And even though round is a shape, I was a different shape back then. I had more angles. And he's looking at me, and I know what he's thinking. He's thinking, he doesn't fit into any Marine Corps uniforms anymore, and he might not fit into any Marine Corps vehicles anymore. And so he says, naturally, he says, well, what is it you're doing now? And I said, well, I guess for lack of a better term, I'm a constitutional lawyer. I said, we defend state marriage laws throughout the country, and we represent clients accused of discrimination under these sexual orientation and non-discrimination laws. I said, you probably heard about the photographer in New Mexico who was sued for refusing to photograph a same-sex commitment ceremony. She really thought it would be a sin to work that ceremony, to put all her talents and all her skills and all her heart and soul into an event that was not part of God's biblical design for marriage. See, she believes in what the Bible teaches, that marriage is only the union of one man and one woman. So she politely declined. I said, now you might not agree with her belief, and you might not agree with her decision, but the First Amendment says she gets to make that decision, free of any punishment. And so his first comment to me is, well, why didn't they just call another photographer, somebody who actually wanted the business? Seems like a giant waste of time. And I said, exactly. Yet they decided to punish her. She spent 7 years of her life in litigation for that decision, almost a quarter of her life. I said, and the problem with these laws is that they force people sometimes to say and do things that violate their consciences. And I go, and he's still nodding. So I say, he's with me. He's a businessman. And I go on to talk about our other clients, florists, bakers, printers. And I say, these so-called non-discrimination laws really take their toll on people. I said, I've already talked to you about the litigation quicksand that people get stuck in. But they suffer business losses, reputational harms. Sometimes there are public smear campaigns by activist groups against them. And then at the very end, for their troubles, a lot of times they're socked with monetary penalties and attorney's fees to boot. And then I realize, as he turns to me, that I've lost him entirely. He looks at me and he says, well, why didn't she just take the pictures then? The question isn't, why wouldn't she take the pictures? The question is, why would we pass a law that would force her to take the pictures against her religious beliefs? And a lot of times you'll see courts and opinions dealing with these issues with our clients. They'll say things like, free speech is a precious right. Religious liberty is our first liberty. And then in the next breath, they say, but in this case, you can have your beliefs, but you can't really act on them. Or something like, well, compromise is the price of citizenship here. But the interesting question here is why? Why this reaction to these SOGIs? Why are they dealt with in this way? And I think the simplest answer is probably the best one, and it's this. The word discrimination scares them. Because in this country, the word discrimination is bound up with slavery and Jim Crow. And we've all seen the pictures, and we know the history. And activist groups that push these SOGIs out there have had a lot of success in selling the notion that Christian beliefs regarding marriage and sexual morality are really no different than newer forms of Jim Crow. And because no one wants to be seen as condoning discrimination, they all just sort of go quietly along with the charade, including the courts. Groups pushing these SOGIs intentionally stretch the word discrimination beyond all recognition. And that's intentional. Why? Well, SOGIs are part of a political movement. And discrimination is a political word. And it's a powerful one, especially when it's thrown into an area where it doesn't belong. And as George Orwell told us not too long ago, political language is designed to make lies sound truthful. Now, what's the lie here? Well, the lie here is that all discrimination is the same, and it's all wrongful all the time. But is that really the case? Let's take a look at another one of our clients. Blaine Adamson is the managing owner of Hands On Originals. It's a promotional printing company in Lexington, Kentucky. They print T-shirts, hats, mugs. He's approached by the Gay and Lesbian Services Organization, and they want him to print a T-shirt order for their Gay Pride Festival. Now, he knows that the Gay Pride Festival celebrates and encourages sexual relationships outside of marriage. In this case, homosexual relationships. So he knows from the get-go that he can't print this order. He can't put his talents and his company's name behind a message that violates his religious beliefs. So he politely declines. But he's a good businessman and a good Christian. And he says to them, his exact words, I won't leave you hanging. I will get you with a competitor who will honor the price I would have quoted you if I could have printed the T-shirts. And in actuality, the group ends up getting the T-shirts for free from another printer who actually agrees with their message, which again is their prerogative. But that's not enough for the group. They sue him for discrimination, and they conduct a public smear campaign against him. There's a Facebook boycott, there are op-eds, there are downtown rallies. He loses at least 3 major contracts and other significant business opportunities. About a month ago, the Human Rights Commission came out with its order. They said, you did indeed discriminate based on sexual orientation. But that's not the best part. Here's the best part. They ordered him to diversity training, presumably because his religious beliefs are no longer to be tolerated in this country. And here's what I'd like to say about Blaine. Blaine is no different from any other business owner in this country, whether they're religious or not. They want to work and they want to live according to their beliefs. And these laws prevent that. Let's take a few more examples. If the Grand Dragon of the KKK were to come to a black writer and say, listen to me, our 150th anniversary is coming up. We want to put together a fawning coffee table book. This thing has to really tell our story, really in a great light. If the black writer were to say, I'm going to have to take a pass on that, would that be discrimination? If a pornography company were to come to a female film director and say, we like your previous work, but we think you'd be even better in a pornographic realm, will you make the jump? Would it be discrimination for her to say, you know what, on first and second thought, I'm not going to go there? And if the Catholic Church, for instance, were to come to a lesbian photographer and say, we're doing a symposium on marriage. It teaches that marriage is only the union of one man and one woman, no more and no less. Would it be discrimination for that lesbian photographer to say, that violates everything I believe in? I can't do it. I'm sorry. Our instinctive answer to all these questions is, of course, no. This isn't discrimination. These people are examining their particular consciences as they form them, and they are making a decision as to what the line is. They can either go over or not. We are all going to have a point in our lives where we have a line that we can't cross, right? And the most important place where we discriminate is in our character. And this is where our clients get into trouble. They fully inform their conscience, right? And they discriminate. They decide, what is the line I can't cross? To what and to whom am I going to remain faithful? Every one of them, including our clients, and including that black writer I spoke about, that female film director, that lesbian photographer, every one of them can say no to a request that forces them to violate their conscience without being guilty of wrongful discrimination. No one owes his or her allegiance to anyone else's belief system. Thank you.